Bonjour Alice, I would like your reaction about the auction of Leonora Carrington for a super record price, $28.5 million. So until now, women surrealists don't were so well treated, right? So how can you explain that? What happened for you?
Well, I think on the one hand, it's exciting. It's important because of the amount of attention, media attention it's gained for surrealism, for women's surrealists, for Leonora Carrington. It's a crazy. I mean, the figure is huge. Obviously, my main concern, or when I was watching the auction, my main anxiety was, please, please, please make sure it ends up in a museum. Because when it's normal because when you have somebody, obviously these become passion privée and somebody collects the work. And in this case, we have Mr. Constantini, was saying he had a hankering for the work for many years, over 30 years. So the fact that it'll end up in a Museum of Latin American Art in Buenos Aires is brilliant, momentarily at least, alongside other surrealist works. Which means people will discover this it's a jewel of a work. And I think it means they also see a much wider map of surrealism and women's surrealists. So alongside Remedios Vero, Frida Kahlo, Leonor Fini, it means people realize that surrealism is not at all male dominated. They began the movement, but in my opinion, women took it over and really brought it in fantastic new directions. By the 40s, during World War II, this really opened up a huge, huge moment for women artists and women surrealists. So exciting. Now, I think people already were knowing Carrington, no? Since she was getting quite a bit of attention with the Venice Biennale, the
Yes,
2022.
a bit. There
Mm.
was also a show in Madrid, I think, no?
Yes, that's true. Carlos Martin did a show there too.
But
Uh,
my feeling is that she paint only in small format.
Yeah, well, this is something I was thinking about because it's like sort of 2 foot by 2 foot. It's a small, which is why I use the word jewel, because I think that's something which actually excites people all the more and makes them think more in terms of the classical, the Renaissance, something that's almost biblical. Because up close, it's, as I say, it's sort of like a window into something, and all of a sudden it explodes as a landscape with lots of elements. And it is also tempera. It's tempera on masonite, which is quite interesting too. It's an old classical technique using egg. And it was very interesting that her move to Mexico, she immediately leaves oil painting for tempera. So
Ah, okay.
yeah, so she's looking a lot to some of these earlier
But
techniques.
do you
And
think
that's
this
good.
is one of the best work she has ever done?
Yes, without a doubt. It's a work I always teach to students. It's a work we included in the Surrealism and Magic show on the Peggy Guggenheim. I mean, I wrote for it. Didn't curate it, but I think it's a work that really, I don't like the word masterpiece. I mean, with women, we need mistress piece, and that doesn't work. But I think, you know what I mean? That language is exactly what the surrealists were going against: the master, the mistress. But I do think it is a jewel of a work, and I think there's a lot. It's so meticulous. It's so detailed. It's got the 4 elements. I think in terms of telling stories, it's actually quite unusual for a modern piece. I think, as I say, it looks back um, to older traditions, older styles. And I think
Dali
actually,
did that too.
yeah, you're right. But Dali did in bigger size. It is something we have with women artists because often, of course, it's in economics. It's about whether you have a big studio. It's whether you have a big canvas. And in her case, they think she was probably pregnant. I don't know if it's sort of intrauterine. The space is lovely in it. It's almost womb-like, and that's quite common with surrealists. But when Edward James visited her in Mexico, he talked about her studio being everything, a kind of a nursery, a kitchen, a workplace. And I think you have that sense of all of life coming together in that work. That does gender it differently from Dali, let's say. Uh,
Mm.
and of course, you've beautiful women. I always think if you look at it, Dagobert is kind of like this little keyhole detail in his red cloak being pulled along. Red is the sign of the magician, the sign of alchemical power. But I think it's the kind of women who are dominating the different sections that are the powers. And again, I think that gives it an extra element for people who will see it. Yeah.
But don't you think it's a problem for the market to only produce small scale work?
Well, her later works, once, I mean, she started doing bigger works. Giantess is bigger. This was exhibited in the Pierre Matisse Gallery in New York in 1948, and there's about a dozen works. So this is a small work, but she has other larger works.
I've not seen that.
Yeah, and then she did tapestries and sculptures. So I think the thing is that we're only beginning to appreciate the full body of work. I would think that some of these smaller works are, you can imagine if she was sort of heavily pregnant and painting, and the photos we have of her, it's very particular. Quite a few of the women surrealists began with that almost illustrative approach, very methodical, and they were looking to Renaissance, to Baroque painting, to classical tradition often because they were self-trained.
And you think she deserves this level of price, 28, more than Dali or more than Max Ernst?
Well, I'm bound to say, yeah, I mean, if it's a competition between the sexes, I'm bound to say, yes, of course she deserves it. I think it's monopoly money for most of us, this sort of idea of how much it goes for. And I also think with surrealism, they were against the market. Carrington was a rebel. She was revolutionary. What's
No, but
nice,
not only against, because Breton or Duchamp were playing with collectors,
true,
advising collectors.
true, that's true. I mean, I think they were also exhibiting, organizing, curating. So they knew that there was an importance of changing and challenging the academy from within. But I suppose what I would want is that people aren't just saying, oh, it's happens to be a female artist, and so much as actually looking at an artwork first. Would you know it's by a woman artist or not? I think there are elements, but it's a very researched piece. So if you think of it as a modern day Hieronymus Bosch, we wouldn't think twice about the price. But as I say, I'm very, very excited that it's going to be on show to the public, because when you have works like this that people get curious about, it's important they see them. And it was the same with Frida Kahlo. Do you remember in the 80s we had Frida Mania, it was called
Yeah.
at the time. Yeah, because the prices went
But
crazy.
Frida Kahlo is a legend. It's different.
Well, that's because she began to be discovered. Then we have cinema. Then we have, I mean, so probably next we'll have a Hollywood cinema on Leonora Carrington, and then all of a sudden the story changes again. But the kind of the character or the life story of Carrington does intrigue people, and I think that helps. I think people don't just want a fantastic work of art in that sense, but the idea of how somebody arrived there and went from England to France, to Spain, had never
But for Frida, there was a big story of love, an idea of
Yes.
martyrdom.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not for
Well,
you.
we have a bit of this with Carrington because we have the association with Max Ernst. Then we have her with Chicky Weiss, the Hungarian photographer, a fabulous circle in Mexico. I mean, I think it would make a good
And
film.
so, what is the next artist who deserves to be better seen? And
Leonor Fini is coming up. Leonor Fini is already getting a lot of critical attention.
yeah, I've written about it because the specialist of Leonore is in France, right?
Yeah,
She's living in France.
yeah.
Right.
So I've been working on Fini for some time, but she's also somebody who I think people know one or two works. And what they don't know are the bigger works, the later works. I adore her mineral works, the post-war works from the 50s, 60s, and contemporary. And she also does a lot of these images of priestesses and goddesses. So you have a female iconography that's fascinating. It's alchemical, it's researched. It's not just a woman for a woman's sake. And I think that's complementary to Carrington. They were, of course, very good friends and very supportive to each other, actually, at the outbreak of the war, sharing letters. So we have a sorority, we have a strong sense of these women knowing that it was really hard to survive, one, during war, that your lover might be incarcerated or you might be nomadic, and that it was really hard to, I don't know, win success. So I think it's good they exhibited. Carrington exhibits, of course, in the Surrealist exhibition. So Breton, as you're saying, as a collector and an orchestrator of exhibitions, included women, and actually I think gave them the lead. People like Mimi Parent in the 50s and 60s. Annie Lebrun was part of the group, Joyce Mansour. So I always think he was a lot more inclusive than many people give credit to. And that's very important. I think this sort of year of the first manifesto, we always, celebrating 100 years, women were there, and the idea of the feminine was there. Yeah, for me.
Merci beaucoup. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.